It's a really fantastic one today on That's Classic, like tremendous actually. We have actually quite a few of the cast of Family, the incredible drama series. It's just one of the greatest that's ever been out there. I'm not overstating that. That's just a fact. So today we have Gary Frank with us from the cast. We have Louise Foley from the cast. We have Elayne Heilveil, well, it says Coslow, but Elayne Heilveil from the cast, John Rubenstein, and then we have the producer of Family as well, and Gary Frank's wife, I want to say, Carroll Newman. So we've got a wonderful, gathering here. So everybody, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Great.
It's going to be
good. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Awesome. I think we'll start with Gary. Gary, I did a lot of research on all of you, and it was a blast, by the way. I loved it. But Gary, there was something that you said at one point. You said that we used to talk every day after shooting during that first season. Everybody would you get on the phone and talk. Who were you talking to? Who out of the cast, and what did you guys talk about?
Every night, Elayne and I would talk. For hours, and we would talk about the day, talk about the people that we worked with, the directors particularly, and the producers, and of the pilot actually in the first 6, and we would compare notes and commiserate, and that was just our habit, right, Elayne?
Yeah, it was a wonderful habit.
Yeah, it was.
I missed it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I adored him. And we were real buddies, pals, kind of like sibling sweethearts. Or for me,
Yes.
Truly. You were my wife. What the hell is this?
I know. Things went on
I'm
while
hearing
you were
about
screwing
this.
somebody else. Things went on, John.
Wow. Can't imagine.
Wow.
What goes to show you, 130 years later, you find out the truth.
Yeah, I know.
Elayne, what do you remember from those calls? What type of things were you guys talking about in relation to the directors or the show itself? What type of thoughts were going through your head?
Well, I think that's going to have to remain underground. Because I think they were kind of personal things, about our feelings about stuff. And don't you think, Gary?
Yes, they were. They were intimate conversations, John.
Yeah.
And we found that we were the only two that could talk that way about the show and about other things in life as well. But particularly the show, because that's what we had in common. I remember Elayne was living with another actor at that time, weren't you, Elayne?
Yeah, yes, for Margot and for part of the
yes,
yeah.
And I desperately wanted Elayne to leave him.
And now I'm so sorry I hadn't.
Oh no. So we talked about
I could have been so helpful with all of that.
Yeah. Well, no, Stuart Margolin is a big guy. I mean, he's very talented. He's a wonderful actor.
Yes.
So, but they were wonderful conversations that we talked about our private feelings, our sensibilities about life and about the show and how we perceived the show. It was special to us working on that, on Family. It was a rare experience for us because it was so wonderful and so many wonderful people were involved with the show. The pilot was executive produced by Mike Nichols and Leonard Goldberg and Aaron Spelling and directed by a feature film director, Mark Rydell, shot by Laszlo Kovacs, who had been he was director of photography on Easy Rider.
Yeah.
We had this collection of really wonderful, magnificent, eclectic people. And
J. Preston Allen, who was a Broadway writer, wrote the pilot.
Yes. And she came from writing cabaret.
Oh, geez.
For the screen.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was the pilot. I mean, that whole kind of feeling of that was incredibly special. And I was never drawn to doing a series, but this was, Mike Nichols, Mark Rydell, I mean, all the Gary, you know what I mean? Like all these people. And so it was kind of a very rare, special event.
Yeah.
And then it was, then we waited like a year or something to find out if we were doing any more episodes, something like that.
That's right. That's right.
Elayne, if you had not seen that, because I did see an interview with you as well where you mentioned this, if you had not seen that Mike Nichols was associated with this in particular, would you have ever gone to that initial audition?
I don't think I was never really cast in certain kinds of things, and I was cast in other things. So this is nothing against Spelling Goldberg at all, but I would never, ever did a Spelling Goldberg show. I was not that, and I think people, and I didn't get things where the breakdown was written for somebody that was me. I got things that people saw other things in. And usually, I mean, this might sound strange or however it's going to sound, but I mean, I think people, when they go higher up in their field, they tend to have a broader vision of something that might look different but more interesting, and I remember a story that Mike Nichols told when we were talking, and I read for another film for him, I think before that or after, I can't remember. And I just couldn't get a handle on it. And it was like starring opposite Warren Beatty, and you know what I mean? Like big stuff. And I couldn't, the script was 200 pages and blah, 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 and the character was weird. And I went in and, Mike Nichols is there and all the other, and I said, I'm sorry, I just don't know, if I'm right for this. And he ended up writing me a beautiful note, but he said the only other person that's ever said that, an actor at an audition, was Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate.
Wow.
He walked in and he said, no, I'm not right for this. Well, he ended up getting it, but I couldn't have done the part. And he told me why, but beautiful. And I just feel like, in my experience, the higher up the people went in their profession, the kind of classier they were,
Wow.
I got notes from them or special, like their time isn't
That's a big deal.
incredibly valuable. And they were kind of richer, fuller, humble people. And that's just been my experience. So that was it. So I don't think I ever even would have been considered.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I kind of took away something like that. So thank you for addressing that. No, I appreciate it. John, along those same lines, at the very opening of the show, it's basically, Elayne's character, finds out that you're cheating. All right. So my thought, just so you know, I have a background as an actor myself. And so as I'm checking that out, I'm thinking to myself, well, where is your headspace at as an actor in that, did you create any kind of actor's bio or anything like that to kind of put you in that place where, like, why would I be cheating on her? Why would I be, doing what I'm doing? Anything like that?
No, I would have to say no. I just leapt into bed with that young woman who was playing the woman I was cheating with, and dealt with Elayne's fury as she threw me out of the house. So yeah, it was pretty easy to just play the moments.
Yeah, okay, I got
Not
you.
a lot of research has to be done there. No,
I got you. Your character, though, I will say this, has one of the more interesting arcs. I mean, you go from divorce, have a child, then you're back together again by the end. Did you have any say in any of that, at any point?
Well, I had a sort of a left-handed say in it. It's sort of behind the scenes, stupid showbiz kind of thing. But the truth is, I had just done a show in New York I had to sign a 2-year contract. I did, and the show ran for 5 years. So I served out those 2 years, loved every minute of it. But during that time, my wife and I had 2 babies. And so the 2 young babies and the 8 shows a week of screaming and jumping on a raked stage that was like this, in bare feet.
Wow.
I was sort of exhausted and had felt slightly imprisoned by that 2-year contract.
Wow.
Even though I was grateful for it, and even the very last performance I did of that show, I loved it. So it wasn't ungrateful. It was just more, I had taken on more than I could really handle. So when I got back to Los Angeles and this show came up and they asked me to do this, and they wanted me to sign a 7-year contract, or was it 5? I think it was 7 in those days. I just said, what? I love the script. I love the part, but clearly the show is about the mom and the dad, Sada and Jimmy Broderick.
Right.
And about the 2 younger kids, Gary and Kristy. Me and Elayne, we're sort of, we're sort of the out story. We live in another house. I'm rich and we're having, marital problems. They are in the house, and the story is really going to be about the family there. And I said, what I don't want to do is be signed up to a 7-year contract where every 6th or 8th episode, Elayne and I come in and we're around the dinner table and we say, yes, we're having marital trouble.
Yeah.
And then we're on. But meanwhile, during the other weeks, I'm contracted to the show and I can't do anything else. So I said that to them. I turned it down, and they called me, all 3 of them at once.
Wow.
Mike Nichols and Mark Rydell and Aaron Spelling on the phone. Hello, this is Mark and Mike and Aaron. I said, why are you turning us down? And I said what I just said. And right away, Mike said, well, why don't we do this? Every 3rd episode will be about you and Elayne. That will be the story. And the others will be about the family, and you'll come in and out as I said, well, geez, that would be terrific, So, and I said, but, I've also started this whole other career that I've been doing that I had to stop during the Broadway show, of writing movie music. And, I don't want to just let that go for 7 years. And so he said, well, why don't you write the music for the show? And I said, oh, well, okay.
Wow.
I'm in. So then they sent me the first 6 episodes, as they sent to all of us. I read them, and no, 2 of those shows weren't about me and Elayne. One was more or less, but basically it was what I had predicted, and not with any spite, just because, that's
right.
what the show was supposed to be. So I did those 6, and then I said, that's it for me. And then over the next 4.5 years, they just kept having me back to do one show at a time. We got back together, we were pregnant, everything. She has another boyfriend, I have another girlfriend, whatever it was. I ended up being on the show for the whole series, but very few times, actually.
Right.
And
So
the last year, we changed our wonderful original writers, the McKeons. And another team came in. I don't remember, Carroll. I'm sure you know who they were.
Ed
They
Zwick.
suddenly took me, my character, and made me a cocaine dealer and all kinds of stuff. Wasn't I selling coke to you, Gary?
You might have.
Oh,
I
my-
think
Oh, you needed him to help you making these deals. And
Yes,
Jim found out about it and the whole
here
thing.
I am. I was this rich guy who had sort of
Oh.
everything he ever wanted, and suddenly I'm a drug dealer. And anyway, I of course did what they told me to do, but I was sad about it.
You were trying to. It was a music group, and you were managing them, and you were the coke supplier.
Yeah.
wow.
I guess that took a bit of a different turn. Wow.
Sorry, John.
No, that's no. I didn't mean that. I mean, I meant
No. But it was what really, because I got really upset about that. What really became important in there was you and Gary, was Willie and
Jeff.
because that relationship really grew over the years. And
Yes, that
for
is.
me, it did, and so that was what happened and bringing Doug into it. So we kind of like had to clean up because it didn't make any sense as you're talking about. So strengthening that relationship was how we kind of fixed it.
Wow. Carroll, actually segueing to that, what was it like for you working with, Mike Nichols, Leonard Goldberg, Aaron Spelling? What was your weekly experience like, during the course of the show?
Well, I didn't work with Mike. I didn't do the pilot. So I never worked with him. And Aaron and Len, they split all of their shows, how they worked on them. So we were fortunate in my mind to have, they're both, were remarkable for the work they did, whether you like the shows or not.
Oh.
It was insanely, they were successful.
Yeah.
But Len, Family was really Len's show. And so he had sort of a mindset of wanting to do real stories. We'd have to push him sometimes to not want it, to go over on the edge a little bit, but he was always very, very supportive of us. And but you never wanted to cross Len, and if he didn't like something, you'd see his teeth just exposed. But he was it was really pretty easy to work with him. We always knew that he would be the bad cop for us if we needed him to be. And he basically let us do the show. He didn't he read all the scripts. He gave us all his notes. He saw all the dailies. He'd always, but he didn't have, his foot on us at all. It really was our group and the show, and he loved the cast. He was very supportive the whole time.
I got you. I mean this in the best way, by the way. If it comes across wrong, I think you know me better than this. But the fact that you were married to Gary and you're dealing with the producers of the show, you're a producer in the show. Was that ever, not necessarily odd between you and Gary, but was that ever, did it ever enter into any kind of odd feelings or anything shifting because, oh, well, you're married to, one of the stars of the show. So
it did. It really never did. It only was it was difficult for me because I didn't, it was a very big surprise to me that we really kind of, we fell in love and decided to get married.
Right.
So when we started seeing each other, it was just, I said, we can't let anybody know this. Because I didn't know what it all meant. I had never dated an actor, let alone, a star of a show I was working on. So that was the difficult time. Once we knew we were going to get married, we let everybody know, then it was, it was fine. It was never an issue. We just, I wore the producer's hat. But we were all, so it was not such really a family atmosphere that, being on the set, I didn't, insinuate myself where, sometimes the actors will just be hanging together, in their chairs in a circle. I could always know when it was right to step in and listen, or when this was a time for just them to be together. So I intuited, for me, it worked fine. It was never an issue. When I did have to ask him to do something, or loop something, and if he didn't want to do that, and he said, why do I have to do it? And you don't have to go through the whole, reason of doing it and saying, we'll try to use the production tracks, but I've got to have a backup. We'd have those kind of conversations, but it was never an issue. It was sometimes, it was more, I think an issue came up is when there was a romantic story. And so
There were a lot for Gary. He had enough relationships for about 10 different guys. Yeah.
I think I just always had, I think I was easy to talk to, and I was comfortable on the set, and I was always comfortable around actors. So I just, I would have done this anyway with the actresses that he was working with. I just, made friends and made them comfortable so that there was never an issue. If anything was ever said, it wasn't said to me or ever got back to me. And I think Gary and the actress always worked it out. So it was never really a problem. People think, how was it hard? Just watch that. It wasn't, how many people get to watch their, husband or mate, making out with somebody or in bed with somebody? It's kind of like, trippy.
Yeah, I bet that was trippy. Yeah.
The only person that made nervous was Leonard. We'd be in dailies and he'd just go, okay, well, let's move on. He used to get nervous for me. But
Carol, did it ever affect your marriage being, working together day in, day out? Did it ever have, did you leave work at work, or did you have conversations about the show when you'd get home?
I think we had too many. We might talked about the script or something, but we worked late. The time we got home, we would cook together, and just sort of wind down for the day. And I'd have to be on the set for a certain reason. That was the kind of dialogue, what's your call? I don't think, Gary, did we ever, end up talking a lot about it?
Somewhat. As we cooked,
just sort of break down the day, like, kind of how was your day? What happened, I might say, Jimmy's, a brilliant actor and he can't loop. He spent hours. He was so difficult for him to do looping. It has nothing to do with acting. So it's just part of, the process. But so maybe I would say things like that, or, that kind of thing, or get mad.
There was so little time, in between wrapping for the day and going to bed and sleeping as much as you could and going back to work the next day. There wasn't a lot of room for discussions. We would cook, we'd eat something and go to bed, sleep.
There might be days that, he didn't work or he got off early and I'd be home later. So, I would be there until we wrapped. So, but it was, we just had a good time. We loved the show. We loved, being with all the people. So it was fun.
Wow. Well, Louise, on your end, obviously, I immediately think of you with Kristy. Not that I don't think of Gary with Kristy, by the way, but I do with you guys. What was that, and we've talked a little bit in the past, but what was it like for, everybody watching this? What was it like offset with you and Kristy? What were you guys doing?
We actually became pretty good friends. We had already done some commercials together prior to Family. And so we kind of knew each other. But we definitely had our teenage years together. Like I think I said once before, when she bought her first car, she called. She got home, landlines, and, I got my Scirocco. And so it was, get over here. And the poor girl couldn't drive a stick shift. Didn't have the clue. But so we were pretty good friends. We would, we vacationed together on a number of occasions. It was very interesting to travel with her. I was not a known actor, but she was. So we were always first. When we'd go into restaurants, they'd find a place for us right away. And when we went to Hawaii, we were allowed in clubs that we should not have been allowed into, but we were able to go because of her name. I met a lot of famous people with her, and it was a really good friend relationship, in that she, I don't know how to put it. I don't want to say she was a nervous type, but she always seemed to, I mean, she was, nails were always bitten down to the quick and all that. But when we were hanging out together, it was a different personality. Mm-hmm. And so our conversations went a little deeper than I think teenagers, or we weren't even, I don't know that we were teenagers even yet, right. A little deeper because we were thrown together with an adult group of people. And though we were adults, so to speak, we were of age, but it was the two of us kind of thrown in together. When we had guest stars, though, on the show, that was kind of fun to get, a different perspective, and then they'd be gone. So we kind of lumped in together. Also understanding the business as she did, and I did to a certain degree. We were pretty thick as thieves, like on set. Yeah, for sure. And then we had a friendship outside. Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. Did that
answer the question?
No, it did not, Louise. No, I'm kidding you. Of course it did. It was great. So one of the things too is you had I think of the episode, I think it was All for Love, if I got that title right. But Leif Garrett was on, which at the time he would have been quite the, kind of heartthrob. What was that experience like? Because I just think of that age group, that time. Yeah.
Well, we had a makeup guy. I think his name was Ted, if I'm not mistaken.
Ted.
You remember him?
Yes.
Yes. I remember asking him, can you do a little more makeup? And he knew, he saw right through it. I mean, this is, here I was probably 13 years old and it's Leif Garrett, just dreamy. That was a tough one. That was a really difficult one, especially because he was going to be gone. We got the one show with him, and I remember telling all my friends. I actually got to go to lunch with him one day.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was the first person to turn me on to Led Zeppelin in his car, very fancy car. But I was really, truly not comfortable in that world. I didn't, I was a teenager. I was a kid. I was awkward already, let alone in front of Leif Garrett. And Clark Brandon, I think, was one of them. Willie Ames. There were a number of boys who came through who were dreamy. They were on Tiger Beat. They were on, those kind of magazines. And here we are working together and sitting at the commissary having lunch.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
It was awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still fun, though. I love it. Before we go on with the interview, I just wanted to remind you to please subscribe to That's Classic if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so that you'll know when my next episode is being released. Okay, let's go on with the interview. Love it. Hey, on another note, Elayne, it's kind of fun, by the way. I feel like I'm doing Brady Bunch right now. But Elayne, I think of your background too as an actress. I got a lot of respect for you, by the way. I have a lot of respect for all of you, but I just think of your background and the kind of your I guess your approach to acting. For you being with Sada, who I think is, top of the line as an actress, what was that like for you to work with her, and what did you have any kind of relationship with her offset as well?
Actually, yeah. When I was having trouble, like John was having with the focus, and I wish that I had a contract like John had, because sure. I was sort of signed up for every show, and I kind of had to sit there, and it was, so I couldn't do anything else, and it didn't feel great, It's like you were getting paid, but you'd rather not. Mm-hmm. And I just remember Sada talking to me about it, because I didn't say anything to her, but she kind of got the situation and just came and talked to me and said, you could do other things. You can, you shouldn't say knit, but wow. You know what I mean? She was just trying to be kind of empathetic and comforting and warm, Mm-hmm. And so that part of her, I think, was wonderful. And then there was an issue that had nothing to do with Sada, but there was a director that was working with her that she had worked with on a lot of shows, and it was I've never had like an uncomfortable thing on a set where somebody yells at you. And there was a scene between us, and again, this wasn't Sada, it was the director at the time, and she was talking to me about the relationship with John, and you know what I mean, and whatever. And as she was talking, I started to cry because it was sad to me. You know, I wasn't planning it, but
you're in the moment.
In the moment, and we rehearsed and the camera was on me, and he came up to me and he said, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I was like, what? You know, and it was kind of disturbing because I was still trying to find who she was. You know what I mean? And I didn't even know when we got the next 5 episodes if John and I were together, divorced, or anything. I mean, they didn't sort of have that trajectory at that point. So so when we shot the little few things that we had together, I didn't even know what our relationship was in between that.
That's crazy.
You know, and I remember asking about it, and it was like, well, did we have a fight? Were we still connected? Were we, you know what I mean? Because we had a baby and there was a christening. You know what I mean? It was kind of weird. Like, did we get back together or what happened? And nobody said anything. So when Sada and I were having this moment, private moment, he said, no, you can't do that. He said, just stand there. And I remember going home, and I was living with a wonderful actor at the time. And I said, I don't know what to do because this is my face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find this and work. And he said, bless his heart, but he said, well, what you can do, it's kind of weird, was go, okay, and when the camera rolls, just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No. So camera rolls, I kind of do it, and I'm sort of like, okay, in the middle of the take, I screaming, what are you doing? Yeah. So that was like, a kind of once in a lifetime experience of being yelled at in the middle of a take, and then you just freeze. So I don't even know what I did in some of it, and I don't know if he, I don't know if he was kind of being protective of Sada because she worked with him and wanted to sort of a certain focus, who the hell knows?
Right.
But I wasn't comfortable, and that was a director that had gone on to direct more episodes and things like that. So that was kind of a strange kind of, what do you do as an actor?
Yeah, that's very
Something
difficult.
like that happened.
Was there an apology for that? Or was it just ignored? Really?
It was just ignored. Yeah, it was like really like being yelled at in the middle of a take on a set.
Wow.
And all I was doing was trying to kind of do the scene the way I felt it. And so that kind of puts you in a strange place.
Very.
So I don't think it had anything to do with Sada. I think he was maybe trying to protect the focus of the scene. Who the hell knows,
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. But that's what actors are for. We're the ones who bring it to life.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thanks for sharing that. That was
Really, so,
really
what
cool.
the hell is like, but yeah, it was one of those moments one remembers in one's own acting trajectory.
Oh, you
It's like,
that
what
says
do
a
you
lot.
do?
That says a lot from so many years ago.
What do you
still
do?
have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny, by the way. I'll tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've been very fortunate. It's been great. But just the other day, I was interviewing, I don't know if you're familiar with the actor Mike McGreevy. He did a bunch of like the Disney films. He as a younger actor, he worked on like the Westerns with Richard Widmark, Robert Mitchum, a lot of stuff. But he was just on the other day, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because of what you said. On the reverse end, he had a situation like that too, where this director, and I think it might have been somebody like a very famous one, like Michael Curtis, somebody like that. But the director was doing the same thing. He was like, no. This is not how you do it, and whatever. And it was, he was a younger guy. He was like, I don't know, 18, 17. And he was working with David Niven. And he went out for a break, and he went for a smoke or whatever. And he's out there, and he turns, and there's David Niven. Kind of shocked him a bit. And he said, how are you doing, young man? What's going on? And he caught him in that moment, and he opened up to David Niven, and he said, well, I don't know what to do. He's directing me, but I'm feeling this. And he said, well, let me explain to you how this works. He said, I've worked with him before. Just listen to him, nod, and say, thank you, great note. And then he said, and then do what you do. And he said, and Mike literally said that through the entire movie, this is what the guy did to him. And through the entire movie, he would do that exact move.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then he would do his moment. And the guy never said anything. But obviously that did not work in your sense. But
yeah, and the director was on for, other episodes and had you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I do.
So it was like you don't, and it's not about power, but it's still about your work and what you might feel it's yourself being up there,
Yeah, very, very awkward moment.
I had that. I mean, this is just to go off a bit, but just talking about acting, I had that kind of the only other time I had that was I was doing a film with Rip Torn, and I told the director beforehand that I did not want to cry in this scene, that it said she cries, because I didn't feel she was kind of being a victim, or you know what I mean? So I was kind of warned the director beforehand that I wasn't going to, and we go to shoot the scene, and I'm working with Rip, and, and we're in the middle of rolling, and Rip goes, wait a minute, you're not going to cry? And I said, no, I'm not going to cry. And now Rip was known for having, you know what I mean?
Oh.
A kind of big personality, let's say.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, wait a minute, makeup, come here, makeup. Now, this was my first film, so you know what I mean? Makeup comes over, blows this shit in my eye, which I have no idea what it is, but it stings like hell. And then it's like, roll them. And the camera's on, and like tears are streaming down my face.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, what the? You know what I mean? And the camera's roll. It's like, okay, cut. Now, Rip was a little more important than I was. You know what I mean? Even though it's missing me.
What?
But it was, I remember going back to the hotel. We were like in the South somewhere, Selma, you know what I mean? And the Holiday Inn, and they have these wrapped glasses that,
in plastic.
So I took out the glasses at the end of the evening, took the plastic off, and went in the back at night, and there was a brick wall, and I smashed every glass from the hotel on the wall, like, and so it's an actor's life. What can I tell you? And that's, and we couldn't do anything because if Rip left, the movie was gone.
Yeah.
So that was it. And
wow.
You try to say something and they cut. I don't want to go on, but there's so many kind of stories that you kind of, I'm sure everybody has. But yeah, that's one of the acting.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a wild one. I can picture you there throwing those things. That's awesome. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Gary, I need to, look, like I said earlier when I was mentioning with Louise about Kristy, I've seen you and Kristy together. I can feel it, all of that. What is it why do you think you became so close, not just on the show, as actors and the chemistry that you had, but why do you think you became so close in, offset and even to this day? What is it? What do you think clicked between the two of you?
It wasn't said out loud, but I think that we had the same, which Kristy was going through it, and I had gone through it, similar childhoods. And she had a difficult childhood, was having a difficult childhood, and I had a difficult childhood. And we sort of intuited that between the two of us. And she's gone through such a metamorphosis since she did that show and she did the following movies and so forth. She now prefers to be called Chris. She doesn't do interviews. She does.
Hence, she's not here. Yes.
No, she's not here.
Right.
She prefers to go to these personal events that she can be one-on-one with people and actually interact that way. But we had similar childhoods, and I understood a lot of what she was going through. And as we spoke privately, she understood and what I had gone through. So there was that personally. On screen, that all translated into this loving relationship between Willie and
Buddy.
Buddy. Yeah, and we felt great chemistry between the two of us, and even love. I must say, we fell in love, the two of us, on screen and off screen. So there was a lot going on both places, on off screen and in front of the camera. And she went through this wonderful metamorphosis, as I have done as well. And now we can relate to each other as adults, as grown-ups who have had not only similar childhoods, but similar experiences as becoming adults.
Yeah.
And so we have that in common. We had that in common, and we have that in common now, I believe.
I also think
Go ahead.
Chris felt really safe with Gary. I think, first of all, she felt really safe. And Kristy and I have talked about this. Chris and I, she felt so safe on the set. And she was given a family that she did not have in her real life. Just the way, Louise, that you've talked about, in terms of the friendship, because she had lots of friends and lots of people around her, but the type of friendship you speak about is like real friendships that kids have when they're in school, and when they go to each other's house, they go on vacation together, and have that intimacy. And I think she really had a whole sense of a family that could get angry, that could do it. She put herself emotionally into that family, and the chemistries between Gary and Chris, you could just, it was palpable, you could see it. And the trust, I think, it was that I would watch her the way that she would just look at them when they were on the set, just hanging together. And actually, I remember when we told her that we were going to get married, and she came up to me afterwards and she gave me a hug, and she said to me, well, is Gary still going to be my big brother?
Wow.
And I said, well, yeah. I said, just marry me. He's not, you're not going to not be your brother, because she really thought of him that way. So I hadn't thought about that in a long time until you asked that question. I remember her saying, a little teary-eyed, was he still going to be her big brother?
Yes, I had forgotten that we both related to each other because we were secure in the Lawrence family. with Jimmy and Sada. We were close. We were very close, tight. Again, on screen and off screen. We didn't socialize together. There wasn't time for that, truly. But we were tight. We were really tight, looking out for each other, protecting each other, relating to each other, and loving each other.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I should say, just for anybody watching this, I did out of total respect to Chris, reached out, and we did communicate, and this just isn't her thing. As you said, it's more doing personal events. So anyone out there, believe me, if she could be, she would be here, but she's made that decision. So just so you know. So
I think that decision goes just to a personality and a personal thing for her, because I've only heard her talk about the show, in the few times that we've talked over the years, that it was a highlight of her life. And I think you guys nailed it with, it was more of a family on the set, a family feel than I think she had at home. Not to say she was from some terrible family or anything, but the connections were so much stronger, I think.
Yeah. I think you're right, Louise. I believe you're right.
Louise, there was an episode, I believe, once again, all these titles fly through my head, but I think it's called The Competition. I may be wrong. If I am, forgive me. But that was kind of a more serious one, because the episode I'm thinking of, the student actually commits suicide that I believe is in the competition with her character, and you're in that episode as well. What did you guys talk about that a little bit, like offset, before you did that show? That episode, rather?
I don't think we did. Was that Mayor Winningham?
Yes,
perhaps?
it was. Yes.
I think it was.
Mayor
Yeah.
Winningham.
Yeah.
I knew Mayor Winningham as well. She went to school with my sister.
Wow.
So I knew her, through my sister's high school years, because they were all in drama together. So when she came on the show, I think I had a different kind of like, hey, guess what? Kathy, my sister. And I think it was a different kind of feel. And as a kid, being 13, 14 years old, those were worldly subjects that I don't think we even, or I had the capacity to understand the depth of it at that time. It was, I had a different life away from the show. And so I had a huge family at home with different experiences and whatnot. So I didn't live it like the family did, the cast. I was kind of the satellite person who would come in and do a show. And so Chris and I would have that rapport, but I don't think we really discussed in great detail what the shows were about together.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, John, thanks, by the way. I appreciate that, because that one's always stuck in my craw, wondering, because it's heavy.
I wish I knew more at that time. I wished I would have,
Well, maybe it's better you didn't. I mean, maybe that, John, I have a question for you. It's so fascinating to me. Your father being Arthur Rubenstein. Arthur Rubenstein. Forgive me.
That's all right.
But I have to say, really, very famous, obviously, in his own right as a concert pianist. What was that? Well, did he, I guess, recognize the fact that you wrote the music for Family? Did he ever comment on that, or because I would think that's kind of a big deal that you're writing music and this is who your father is.
No, I don't think he ever saw an episode of Family, but I had scored some movies before that, and he was quite sort of startled that I was doing that, because I'd played the piano all my life. We were forced to have piano lessons, and I'd had sort of traumatic experiences. Whoever was coming to dinner, my sister and I had to play for them at
Really?
the evening. So, and my mother was a great cook and they loved to entertain. So they would say, "Oh, we're having dinner tonight with people coming over." And my sister and I would go, who's coming? And, I got to play for Igor Stravinsky. And we played for, all the great conductors and composers. And it was a horrible task. Why am I telling you that?
I'm enjoying it. That's why.
Yeah.
That's some great stuff.
So I always wanted to be an actor, and I was acting already. And my dad was, he always thought I should have been a conductor. That's what he wanted me to be. I wasn't a pianist. I was never going to be a real pianist. But he felt I was a good musician. But I didn't want to go to a conservatory. In those days, it felt like, another form of prison. Second time I'm bringing that up. I don't know why. And so I said no. And I lived in New York, and I saw all the Broadway shows because you could afford to in those days.
Yeah.
Which you can't anymore. If you're a kid in New York or anywhere, and you love the theater and you want to learn and you want to see what do they do, those?
They have to wait in line at 3:00 in the morning.
I mean, yeah.
Wow.
But anyway,
Wow.
so that's what I wanted to do, and he was perfectly fine with that. And he came and he saw me, act in shows in New York and wherever. But when I came up with my first big movie score with an 80-piece orchestra,
Wow.
he said, What? How did you do that? And I said, well, all my young life, I sat in orchestras when he was playing with an orchestra.
Wow.
In recording sessions and in rehearsals for concerts when he was playing. I traveled with him a lot. And they would let me because I was his kid. They sort of couldn't say no. So I would sit next to the oboe player, and then I would sit next to the timpanist, and then I would sit next to the, I never sat in the string section because they were going to hit me with their elbows. Yeah. But I sat with the brass players and the percussionists, and just by osmosis, not at all being a committed young musician, I figured out orchestration. I heard in a Mozart concerto what the bassoon did, and the part that sounds like that, he's going pop, 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 pop. And somewhere it was all in my brain. So when I was asked to score a big movie score for the first time, and they said, "Can you do that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I did. And so that did impress my dad. He said, "I don't know how you pulled that off."
How did that feel?
He was very happy about it.
How did that feel for you? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, your father, we're talking about a world famous, person in his field, and he is coming to you and saying, "That's pretty impressive." How did it feel?
Felt pretty good.
I bet that was a great moment for you. Very cool. Hey, by the way, going back when they were in that conversation with you, Mark, Leonard, and Mike, and they're saying to you, "Well, then then do the music for family." Did you gulp at all, or were you just kind of like, "Oh, great, sure, I'd love to do that"?
I was basically trying to be polite and explain why I was not going to do their show.
Right.
And everything I sort of said, well, here's why. They would say, well, forget that. Well, go ahead. And so I felt a little bit embarrassed, actually.
Wow.
But very pleased. And I went ahead and did it. But it was rough because I was in that first season anyway, working in the show and then writing the music for all of the episodes and having to record it. And, it was a little bit of overkill, but it was fun. And the second season, Aaron, it wasn't Len, it was Aaron in those days. He came to me and he said, the theme you wrote for the show it's a little melancholy, which I felt from the show. That's why I wrote it that way. It was sort of a white person's blues. He said, could you write something a little more uplifting? for us. And so I did. And so the rest of the years, the sort of main theme was a whole different sort of sprightly little tune. But I always liked the first one the best.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Me
sort of
too,
based
by the
a
way.
little bit on me and Elayne, you know, because our little story had that sadness. The
Oh.
family with the four other people was sort of lovely and had a sheen to it. And I put that in the music too. I put an instrument for each character. Jimmy was a cello and Sada was an oboe. And Gary was the vibraphones, and Kristy was a flute. Elayne was a whole string section, all the violin, and I was a trumpet. and I put that into the main theme, and then I used it throughout all the episodes. But then the second season, it was a completely different thing.
Wow. That's fascinating, John. Fascinating. I love that. That's cool. By the way, my son plays the vibe, so love hearing that.
What a wonderful instrument. And I always thought it fit Willie so well. I don't know why I did, but because all the others were sort of these extended, they had these full lines with big whole notes, and the vibes couldn't. So they were always just sort of dancing around and figuring out what to do next. And I had a wonderful player who played those vibes, and so anyway, it was great.
That's pretty cool. Wow, thank you. Thank you for that.
Just
That was
hear it.
really cool. Hey, Gary, I wanted to ask you about a specific episode, actually. It was Willie's 21st birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you have any recollections from that one? Any special thoughts or anything? And I this is a tough question. I asked this of so many different actors. Sometimes it's like I did so many, I can't remember that specific moment. So if you don't, I understand, but I'm just curious on that one. That's up there for me.
I remember the scene where Jimmy, Doug, and Willie go to a strip joint and meet Bambi, played by Shara Denesi, and who is Peter Falk's wife. And she was in the episode and played a very major part in that particular episode. And somehow we ended up at the Santa Monica Pier here, a beautiful pier in Santa Monica, and with all these it's like an amusement park there.
Oh yeah.
They had bumper cars. And I remember being in the bumper cars with Jimmy and Shara, and Jimmy and I trying to annihilate each other with these cars. And that was great fun. Shara was wonderful. What do I remember about her? She used to chew parsley for her breath. It was just a wonderful imagery, and I thought it interesting that Doug would take Willie to a strip joint for his 21st birthday, not taking him out to have a celebratory drink for the first
Right.
go and see ladies dancing in front of you with very little on. I
While
think
you were drinking. How you were drinking. You were having drinks.
drinking, but I think it was because Doug liked that. Doug probably. I'm sorry. Doug wanted to go to a strip place, and it was a perfect reason to go. I'm probably wrong about that, but it was a wonderful episode to do. It was a wonderful rite of passage, and each one of us had a rite of passage in the family. Kristy, well, there was that episode, Rites of Passage, right? Isn't that correct? That title?
Yeah,
And
I'm pretty sure that's right, by the way.
we had these transformations from children into adulthood, and they were each unique. They were each specific to the character. I can't remember exactly what Chris's was, but mine was to go to a strip club and enjoy myself. It wasn't difficult, but Willie had a good time. And I can't answer your question any more specifically.
You did great.
Without being arrested, but it was a fun episode to do. Fun because I got to work with Jimmy in a completely different episode, kind of episode. I adored Jimmy, and I would like to think that he adored me. And we always got on, and there was a mischievous mischief Doug was, and Jimmy was, I should say. There was always a glint in his eyes, and he loved to crack wise and to make fun of himself as a character, and sometimes make fun of the rest of us as well. Wow. And there was that smile, that mischievous smile that he had at the strip club. Doug was enjoying himself while he took his son on this adventure from becoming a man.
Yeah, I think
Cheryl was there to make sure that I did become a man. I was with so many different women, John. I can't keep track of them. I was with a different girlfriend every week, and that's true. I went through half of the Hollywood with being involved with a different woman.
It felt like it.
Yes, I did too.
If you want to get in on the fun of That's Classic, go to my merchandise store. You can get a t-shirt, a mug, or a variety of items. The QR code is right here on the screen. That'll take you right to the site, or I'll put it in the description below the video. Have fun, enjoy. Let's go back to the interview.
Wasn't Shelley Long actually one of them?
Shelley Long was. She played the cello in that episode, John. And so she was.
I was married to her once, where I was going crazy. And she had 7 personalities.
Oh my God! Well, she had that effect on people.
Well, there you go.
I only got up to 5 personalities. She had that effect, and she was on the show. Elizabeth Ashley, a big movie star, was on the show. I'm trying to think of her name. Carol, what was that of that wonderful English actress?
Samantha Egger.
Samantha.
Oh
Egger.
my God, she's gorgeous.
Wow. Yes, and I had a crush on her forever from seeing her in a movie called Far from the Madding Crowd.
Yeah.
No, she wasn't in that.
She wasn't in that particular.
Oh.
What was she?
That's my favorite movie almost of all time. That's why.
Was she in The Collector? Was she
The Collector?
The
Yes.
Collector.
Yep.
Oh, she was breathtaking.
Oh my
Good
God.
catch. Wow.
Yeah.
Wasn't it also Susan Hubley or
Yes.
Garrett?
Was in it for a number of episodes.
Yes.
I can't keep
Kim
track.
Cattrall.
Who's
Kim
that?
Cattrall.
Kim, yes.
Right.
Cattrall.
Cattrall. Who else? Lalo.
I just went blank.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite a few.
Yeah. I don't think I ever had a romantic relationship with Shara Denese, with Bambi.
No. But you hired her to be your secretary later.
I did.
Willie did,
Oh,
yes.
gosh. I got her out of the strip business
Yeah.
and into the secretarial business.
Yes.
Wow.
A come down, it was. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry, John. I got
Not it. What do you mean? Not at least. No, just saying. No, that's fantastic. And Season, if I'm saying that right again, I don't know. Season Hubley. I did try to connect with her. I just was unable to, but I would have had her on too. So yeah.
Yeah.
What about we on the other side of the coin? What about Michael J. Fox? I know was on, and I mean I'm a huge fan of Michael J. Fox, so I don't know. Maybe that's it, but it stuck with me because I think that's the episode where he has a crush on Sada.
Yeah.
Actually, and it's like I don't know. He's like 15 or something like that. What do you recall from that? Any Carol? Do you have any memories of that?
It was Ed Perone directed that episode. Wonderful director and friend, and he had done movie for television, or I think it was, in Canada, and Michael, he had cast Michael in it. And so when this part came up, and he said, "There's this wonderful kid. He's Canadian. He's 18. He looks like he's 13." And so and we cast him, and so it's the first kind of like a American series that he had done. He was really just starting out, and he was just he was so sweet, and he felt like he was 13. I mean, he was a very young, innocent kind of young man at that. So, but he was just so wonderful. You could tell that was going to be somebody who was going to really go on and do great things. And Perron, he knew that. That's why he wanted him to do this part, which was great, because to have that really work, you needed a kid, but you needed someone that had maturity to be able to work with Sada and understand.
Exactly.
It didn't become like one of these little things, and stand up to her so that she could understand that he was falling in love with her. But there was so much comedy, and it was also a lot of fun because Sada's so funny, and when she gets to play those comedic moments, I mean, she's brilliant. She just does it. It's just innate. I mean, she's not a joke teller. She leaves you, and you just start laughing because she's had the best sense of humor.
Was she funny offset?
Yeah, she was.
I was going to say that we had so many guest stars, John, who went on to be big stars. Shelley Long, you mentioned Michael J. Fox, Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh yeah,
of all people, was on there involved with Nancy, and huge stars. And they used family as a launch pad. They wanted to do things that were good, that were classy, and family was both of those things. So we attracted the kinds of actors that Carroll reminded me of: Samantha Eggar and Elizabeth Ashley and Susan Hubley and all kinds of other wonderful actors and actresses. But we provided that sort of launch pad for greater careers for a number of people. Michael being one of them, Shelley Long, as I said, Tommy.
Yeah, Louise just mentioned. Are you the one that said Ted Danson?
Yeah, I did.
Ted Danson was on there too. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Was Tommy Lee Jones? He was in the first season, right? Was that?
No, he was. No, he was. I forget maybe the second or third.
It was related to what you said. You said rites of passage, but it was like coming of age or whatever.
I thought it was a construction worker, and Nancy walks by, and he's comes on to her. So I don't remember the whole story. He's not coming to me, but yeah.
Could you feel it from him? By the way, could you feel this guy's got that presence?
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was just so wonderful because you're always wonderful actors. I think it was an opportunity, one, to do something, to do some really nice writing. Writing was so great. So to be able to do that, I think, was one thing that people, were able to show themselves. It's I think that in itself, you have to have a script has to be there first for an actor to show himself. Because a lot of actors who did all these other kinds of series, but they didn't get to do, this kind of show. And it's like that was the Hill Street Blues. Those things started happening, and it really was something that actors could show what they really could do. So I always found that just even the smallest part was just really wonderful actors. We were able to see where, sometimes they come in and the resume was never stuff like this. So, you'd always be surprised by when the readings, because they were saying real words and real things. It's really nice.
Oh yeah, no, I can see it. I mean, the quality, you say that over and over, to people, like family still stands today, but it does. I mean, it's that good, without a doubt. Elayne, on a whole nother note, what's the story behind you leave after the first season. What were the dynamics that took place that came about?
You mean in terms of leaving?
Yeah.
Or you mean how did that happen?
Yeah. How did that all come about? Yeah. That it was like.
I can't speak for the other side. During it, I kind of, oddly enough, I went to an attorney to see if I could get out of my contract.
Yeah.
And because like John, I never wanted to be kind of, committed for like 7 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in process of that. And then that was kind of my side of it. But then I just kind of, I think I met a friend of mine at the time, was Brooke Adams or something. And I met her somewhere and she said, "Oh yeah, I just went up for your part." I just read up for your part. Mm. So, and so again, I can't speak for them, but that's basically what happened on my end. And what's interesting is that the attorney that I went to see about trying to get out of my contract had a friend and said, "There's an actress that I met that I think you'd really like." And because of that, I ended up marrying the person that I married.
Oh,
so, it's like very strange life situation. And so that was a strange thing. So that was my side of kind of the story.
What a beautiful thing to come from that, though.
Yeah. It was beautiful for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It was interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Door, that old one door closes.
Exactly. You don't know, something might look bad and it's actually good, or something looks good and it's actually bad. So one never knows, right. Moment by moment.
I gotcha. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't know about that. Louise, by the way, I meant to ask you earlier. I just forgot. Do you remember your audition for the part of Audrey?
Yeah. I think there were 3 auditions that we had to go through. The first one and then the callbacks, and it was down to 3 of us. And Carol, you gave me permission to use that word out loud, that name. So there was a gal who was in reading for this. This is our 3rd round of interviews. She was taken in first, and she comes out, and how a child would know how to do this, I don't know. But she stepped out and she closed the door behind her, and she said, "Well, you guys could just kind of go on home, I guess, because they just offered me the role." And walked out and there was another gal in there. I can't remember who it was, but I remember the 2 of us like, what the heck? Like, like full panic, like, just like it just changed the idea of going in and interviewing and doing your best. But this was Spelling a Goldberg production. So I knew of Spelling a Goldberg. And my mom would tell me, like, these are, I was a kid. So, these are very important people in Hollywood, and they, they're just, sweeping, the shows through the week, they always have something new. And so I went in and I read for it. And I did the best I can, hoping that maybe they would think about me for another show. And then to find out that I got it. And that girl was doing I don't know, like a mind, I don't want to, it was mind fuck.
Yeah,
truly.
Totally.
On kids who were 12 and 13 years old. And she was our age. Like, how do you know this kind of stuff? Except for her mother was an agent in town. They were part of a very large family, the Savage family. Brad Savage, I think, is one of the names that still comes to mind. But that was I think that's the only time I ran into that mentality, that snake-like personality. Yeah.
Well, boy, you
It's a
held
tough
on.
business.
What'd you say, John?
I just said it's a tough business.
It is a tough.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another one. Listening to
You got
Elayne
time,
reminded
please.
me- listening to Elayne, that reminded me when I was maybe 10 years old. I went out for and I got the part of Joanie from Happy Days.
Oh,
So I was in the original pilot for the show. We get the phone calls, my agent calls, and the show's being picked up. Happy Days is going to be it's going to be big. We just know it. And within a week, we get a phone call from my agent saying they're going with somebody with dark hair because the father looks like he's not really a part of the family. So they're going for a dark hair. And I remembered, being sad because I had all this excitement about like a series. I didn't even know what the heck that was. I was new. I had done commercials, but I had never done a show like a series. And I remember my mom just saying, "Are you going to be okay?" And I was like, yeah. I was used to rejection at that age, that the color of my hair would make such a difference. So, yeah. So when it comes to, yeah. So that was part of my start in the business at 10. So.
And we're talking about Happy Days. I mean,
Happy Days.
kind of went on to, yeah. Wow. What a moment. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, cool. Yeah. Very, very cool. John, I'm going to go to you on this one. I'm curious, during that time when you were, you had whatever, I think it's 5 years or so in there, and you're coming back, was it like always, oh, great, they're calling me back, I'm thrilled, what am I doing now? Or were you also working on other projects during that time that it was kind of, difficult to jump back in, or did it always time out just fine?
Oh, no, it was frequently a disaster of scheduling, but I was always delighted to come back to the show. I always loved the show from the very first time we all met for the sort of table read of the first episode, and we all shook hands and said hello. I was thrilled and honored to be a part of that cast and that show. And scoring those first 6 episodes, I also saw just how wonderful the writing was, and just everything about it. I just thought it was a great show. So yeah, anytime they asked me back, I was thrilled to come back. I mean, the stories were all a little bit weird, but about my character, I mean, in particular, because the problem was always that Jeff was this bad guy. He was rich and he thought he could get away with everything. And I always chose, talking to you about what Elayne was talking about, no director ever really got in the way, but the slant of the scripts and of the character were always that he was this sort of ne'er-do-well, this asshole guy who, just because he had so much money, he felt he could treat people badly. And I always played him like he was madly in love with Nancy, as I had been with Elayne. And that, he cheated on her, but not out of evil, just out of some kind of, wrong thought. And once they divorced, mostly because I had left the show. And so they said, well, if you're not going to be around, then Nancy, of course, is going to be on. So we have to divorce. And I don't know how correct I am, but I believe that among sort of dramas, primetime dramas on television, that was the first divorce of principal characters. The principal was often a widow or a widower or something, but never had two of the principal players gotten a divorce in the middle of the show or in the early part. So that was a sort of a big deal, and I think it was one of the things that helped the ratings, because it made people because it was real. So many people go through divorces, and that in those days you just didn't see that on television, maybe in the soaps, but not in the primetime stuff. And so it made people say, wait a minute, this show, among many other reasons, is sort of telling the truth about family life, about what goes on and what happens after a divorce in a close family like that with a baby. So it was very, very interesting, and I loved it. But there was one episode where I had gotten a part. You were talking about scheduling. I had gotten a part in a movie that was to shoot in London, right? And I got this part, and it was like 3 months in advance. They started shooting it. They were shooting it in Brazil. They were shooting it in other countries, in Portugal, and then they came to the English part. And I said, well, you know, they say on or about such and such a date, I will have to start shooting. But I said, well, it'll be, you know, a week, 4 weeks after that. It always runs long. So whenever. So then the family episode came up. That was the one about the cocaine with Gary. And I said, sure, of course I'll do it. But it just so happened that the last day of shooting on the family episode, which was tight, that didn't waver very much.
Right.
Was the day before my on or about start date for the movie in England. And I said, forget about it. No way that they're going to be ready for me in England. You know, well, of course they were. And so we went late that night at 20th Century Fox and with family. And I just made the red eye, whatever that was, got onto that plane, still with my makeup on, which in those days, we guys wore more makeup than anybody does now, because the lights were so harsh and they would smear all this orange makeup on us. So we looked sort of horrible. Anyway, but with all my makeup, I ran to the plane. In those days, there wasn't security, so you could just actually run onto your plane.
Yeah.
Which I did, flew to London, got off jet lagged and sort of exhausted, and I was met at the airport, and I figured they'd take me to my hotel, and I would, you know, whatever, get ready. They said, no, we're ready for you on the set, Mr. Rubenstein. And they drove me to this location in the middle of London, and I walked up, and 2 little foot marks were chalked on where I was to stand. I mean, they were lit and ready for the scene I had with this little boy in his doorway. And they took me up into this house, and they opened my suitcase and said, what do you have that you can wear? And they put my own clothes on me, and they shoved me downstairs and kitchen. And I had to do that scene. I'll never forget that. Anyway, that in terms of scheduling, that was the most terrifying part that I'd ever run into.
John, I have to ask you something.
Okay.
Tell me if this is just in my head or if it actually happened. I think it was the pilot, after we finished shooting it, I remember not wanting to go home, and it was late, you know?
Uh-huh.
Did we go to the Apple Pan after this?
Yes, we absolutely did.
It was like there was such a kind of feeling, and it kind of didn't want it to end, you know, and we just didn't want to go home.
No,
and we sat in the Apple Pan.
My favorite place to eat. It still is there.
Oh, I know.
You know, all the time.
And yes, I said, let's go to the Apple Pan.
Oh God, I know. So I'm so glad I didn't imagine it. Yeah, it must have been 2, 3 in the morning, you know.
Well, I don't remember what.
Yeah, it was.
No, I don't think they stayed open that late, did they?
Yeah, they were open 24 hours.
Oh, it was. Oh,
yeah, because it was, and we just
I used
sat.
to do my homework there when I was going to UCLA years before.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It's a little house.
Yeah.
LA with all these huge skyscrapers.
Yeah, they wouldn't sell.
They wouldn't sell.
Yeah.
It's been there since I'm a little girl. It's a lot of years ago.
And the guys who work there, I say, because they're mostly are the same. I mean, I think I by now have gone through at least a couple, if not 3 generations of them.
For sure. And they
But
all have a piece of it.
They stay there. Yes.
Wow.
No, it's just the best. If you're ever, West LA, just stop at the Apple Pan.
Best hamburger in town.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hickory burger.
Hickory burger. Yeah.
I'll have to remember that, the Hickory Burger for sure. I know what you're talking about, by the way. I hadn't gone. Wow. What so on another note, Quinn Cummings comes into the show in Carol, if I'm right on this, season 4. Is that right? Sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that change the I don't necessarily mean change maybe the wrong word. What did it bring to the show at that stage of it? What do you think happened? I don't know if Gary, you want to address it or not. What do you feel it changed within the dynamic of the show?
Well, Kristy was getting older, and they wanted, I don't know if it was the network or Len Goldberg wanted a younger girl in the show, I believe. Is that correct, Carol?
No, it was kind of the network, and Len agreed with it to bring, that little girl aspect into it,
Yes.
which I understand. And Quinn was great. So it all worked out really great. But I think because it's Quinn, her maturity and just the way, so Carol McKean really wrote for that. So you didn't have, like you had the little girl in Kristy, it just wasn't the same kind of things. And I think it ended up giving it a nice flavor because she was such an interesting character, as an interesting kid. So I think I would have been afraid if it had been a little girl with not having special stuff. I mean, Kristy as a little girl was so special.
Yeah.
As a character, as an actor, that you could do these great stuff. And I feared in the beginning that they were going to bring in somebody, get a little cute.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I fear the network was going to do, but it didn't go that way at all, thankfully.
Thankfully, yes. Quinn had just come out of The Goodbye Girl.
Oh, gosh.
Nominated for an Academy Award. And the character was a very intelligent, very smart young kid. And she brought all those things to the character of Annie on our show.
That's who Quinn is.
I'm sorry?
That's who Quinn is.
That's who Quinn is.
Just her own personality.
Yeah. So it worked for our show. She was not precocious, but what would you say, Carol? She was
smart beyond her years. She's
sophisticated, I think is.
Yeah, which Kristy wasn't.
No.
Kristy wasn't sophisticated. Also, Quinn had done an episode previously, playing a friend of Kristy. I can't remember the character's name.
Oh, wow, I don't think I knew that.
Maybe it was. Oh, I can't remember the character's name. Do you remember, Louise?
No.
Yeah, so we already knew that what she could bring to it, but she had that. You're right, Gary. Sophistication, maturity, just in her own nature.
Yeah,
Yeah. She went on to be like an entrepreneur on her own. I mean, she's quite the business she got going. I can't remember specifics about it, but I remember that
something to do with baby gear.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was something like that.
Sling.
That's it. Yeah, the baby sling.
Sling. That women could, new mothers could carry their child around in, and it did very well.
It did really well, like to the point I was reading up on her. She sold the company in like 2006. I mean, it wasn't like just some small little endeavor. I mean, she did, did really well with that. So,
and
obviously.
She's written a number of books, and she's just that smart human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's why she was cast in The Goodbye Girl. And I have an inkling, of course, that helped her get cast in Family.
I think you're right. I think she just innately had that. The other, I guess, thought in my head is Meredith Baxter Birney or Meredith Baxter now. What I'd like to just kind of go around a little bit, like what you recall. I mean, John, did you have any kind of friendship offset, or what was that like for you?
Well, it was a little traumatic, I have to say, to the degree that such things are traumatic. I was married and then divorced from Elayne, and
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm curious.
Nancy
Where?
was Elayne, who is her very own, very specific kind of person, both in life, as you can see, but also on camera, in
Certainly.
the show. Her Nancy was a particular person, and our relationship, which we did forge over those 6 episodes, was interesting to me and meant a lot to me.
Mhm.
So when I got the news that Elayne was no longer going to be on the show, I was upset. I didn't make a thing about it. I had nothing to say about it, but I was sad.
Sure.
So then they hired a lovely actress to play Nancy.
Mhm.
And we shot, I think they shot 2 or 3 shows. I was in one of them, which was the divorce show, where we sit at a table in a restaurant, big long scene. And then there were other scenes too, what that was, the repercussions in the family. I said, okay, well, on we go. But then about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call saying that actress is no longer playing Nancy. We have now hired Meredith Baxter Birney. I said, what? I never heard why, and nor did I ask. She had done, in my humble opinion, a very, very good job.
Mhm.
But no, gone. So now I show up at that same restaurant set, and I divorce Meredith.
How weird.
For the first time. And I'm sure all you, Gary, and everybody else in the show had to shoot 2 or 3 episodes. All of the scenes that had been shot with the other actress, now with Meredith. And from then on, it was Meredith, of course. And we went through many, many episodes going through our marriage. And it was a whole different thing. She was a completely different person.
Mhm.
And it worked fine. And no, I was never friends with her off camera, although I did do a play that I originated called Love Letters.
Oh, very famous.
For 2 people. I was the first one to do that play.
Oh,
And
wow.
I did it
wow.
sort of like Gary. I did it with pretty much the list of very good actresses of roughly my age over a bunch of years, and Meredith was one of them. We did it together in San Francisco in 1990. So
Wow.
many years after, and we had a great fun, coming back together.
That was nice, the 2 of you together on that.
Yeah. We had a very, very good time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's also something that I was told just in terms of the character of Nancy when I started it, and I can't remember if it was Mike Nichols or Mark who said this to me from the script, and he came up to me and he said, you're not going to be liked.
Really?
Yeah, as a character. And I just remember him saying that. And I think there was something kind of I really don't know, but something endemic in the character that wasn't written in a certain way that was not as warm or endearing, or I don't know what. Something was lacking in terms of connection. But that was actually told to me before,
That's interesting. Yeah,
doing it.
That's
Yes.
exactly,
I can't quite put that in its place.
Yeah.
that is what happened with Nancy. I mean, that is what happened with Nancy. I mean, people watching the show, that's what always was said.
Yeah. There was something not likable about the way it was, formed.
Well, it's because she treated Jeff very badly.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, and
Let's be honest.
yeah, and I think sometimes people can't differentiate between, let's say, a character's actress and the likability of somebody who's playing it. You know what I mean? Or that. So yeah, but Carol, you can speak to that.
Well, it was. I mean, that's why Kate had so much. Kate had, and Nancy had a lot of this.
Yes, there was friction.
And that was really by design. And Kate, was always hard on her. And that was a lot. You're always so hard on. Jimmy would say, "You're always so hard on Nancy," and Kate would say, "Well, that's because you're not." To Doug, because Nancy could do no wrong, and that's why Doug, I think, disliked Jeff so much, and many of the reasons were not really who Jeff was. It was just Doug protecting Nancy, which was all good, I thought, for good character within the.
Yeah. And, that actually, for the first time, maybe makes sense. Because who knows? Like with the scenes with Sada, in terms of maybe for me not to appear empathetic in a certain way, I don't know, but it was.
It's not talked about. If the actors don't have this information,
right. Yeah. But or something about the character that was treated a certain way, and I certainly didn't know that. You just try to find it within how you're doing something, and it wasn't there. But yeah, that's very interesting. I think I remember hearing, and I don't remember whether Gary said this or what, that by the time I think Meredith came on, he said, James Broderick said something like, "Yeah, all the old Nancys are kept up in the attic," or something like that.
It sounds like him.
Yeah.
We were sitting around with the chairs in a circle, and Meredith, was sitting there. She had just come, and she was, she was a little nervous, and she was looking up, and she says, "What's that up there?" So it's like up in the rafters, and the door. And Jimmy says, "That's where we keep the Nancys." So
and I knew the actress that came in after me, and she was lovely. I mean, just a sweetheart and
sweet
lovely
person, everything good. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What that was really about, because it's such an awful experience, is that once we started seeing the dailies and seeing sort of parts put together, she felt more like she would be a relationship with Willie.
Oh, yeah.
And because if you look at the qualities, like between her and you, Elayne.
Yes.
And between like
Meredith.
Meredith and her, it was just a different, it was younger.
She had a more youthful kind of.
Yeah,
she did. That's true. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it just wasn't working. That looked at it's
that makes
no longer
sense.
with us, unfortunately, Jane. But I used to drive her home, and she was just this wonderful, splendid, no guile about her.
Yes.
She was sweet, terrific. She was married, and the show would have made her life and her husband's life completely different. It would have been wonderful for her, wonderful for her husband, and turned her life around. And I just felt absolutely devastated when she was gone. But I think she was just too soft and too likable.
Yeah.
When she did Nancy. But that's one of the things in Hollywood that happens, and I just it's tragic. It's tragic, John.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it Jane
Actman? Jane Actman. Yes.
Yeah.
She was lovely.
That's right. Carol, do you remember then when Meredith, obviously you were saying about, which I love that story. I will never forget that story now about the attic. But do you remember when she first auditioned for the show, Meredith?
I don't remember her auditioning. I don't think
she had done that series. She was already quite
well. She came in and met. but I don't
And
think
that was it.
I don't think she did an audition.
I gotcha.
I think
She had just come off Bridget Loves Bernie, I think.
yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they were also seen, blondes. I know that became, as long as they were redoing it, just to have some contrast. But yeah, so she came in and met, but I think she came in and Bridget Loves Bernie, I believe, was also an ABC show. I could be wrong, but she just felt that was the right way to go. And Meredith, she too didn't want to be committed to the whole year, the 13 and 22. So she, I forget the amount of episodes, but she did a certain amount of episodes through the season. So then because she wanted to be able to spend more time. She had little babies at home and stuff. So we figured out the schedule because we pretty much knew the direction the shows were going, and because it's not, there was always a through line of growth and, having to sort of follow each other. So we would basically know, her episodes, and then we'd coordinate it also with John's schedules and stuff. So she did a certain amount out of all the episodes.
And wasn't her husband David Birney? Wasn't he on the show too?
Yes, he was. And truthfully, I don't think it was a very good experience for her. He was not very kind to her.
I remember the crew always sort of defending her, and
You're so right, John. You're so right.
there was a
Yeah,
big feeling about that.
they were very protective of her, and they knew it wasn't good. And so when he played a love interest for her, and it was not good. I mean, it was a good episode, and she was wonderful, but it was not. There were very few episodes or experiences, I think, where our cast was uncomfortable. And this was one of them. The
I
crew.
once remember I had a scene with her where we were fighting, and I had to slap her.
Oh, that was great. Oh, God.
I know, and I'd done a lot of fake fighting in movies and stuff. So I said, okay, make sure to turn your head and do all that stuff that you do, and they'll put in the big whack sound later in post. But she said, no, I want to make it real. So really go for it. I said, well, yeah, but then I'll have to sort of make it weaker, and I don't want it to, it's supposed to be horrible. And she says, no, go for it. So I said, oh, okay. So we do the take, and I go, wham, and she goes, and it was great and printed. But then she had these 4 finger marks on her cheek, welts from, I hadn't really hit her that hard, but somehow she had very, I guess, white skin or something. I was mortified. I spent the whole rest of that day sort of just hiding my face from everybody because they had to keep putting makeup on it, and it was, oh God, I was so ashamed of myself.
I'm feeling that moment right now. It was,
oh my God,
very difficult for everyone.
Wow.
You was just like you shriveled.
I wanted to kill myself. I really felt so bad.
Oh, that's a heavy moment. Yeah. Jeez.
By the way, if I conk out, my battery is low and not plugged in because I said my computer was kind of weird. So I'm not hanging up on anybody, but I'm just I got a warning.
Oh,
so,
we got Meredith upstairs, so we'll just
somebody will come in and replace me.
Yeah. We're used to that now.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just move, and so don't get seasick, and see if I can plug myself.
Oh my gosh, that was great.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you got it, Elayne. Definitely. I'll do that. Gary, on a whole other note, look, you and I had Gary was on the show on his own and on my show, I should say, and we had a lot to talk about, and we talked about like the moment, like, Henry Fonda was on. You and I had the opportunity to discuss the episode, where your friend says that he's gay. Outside of those, though, are there any other memories of the show, that really hold dear to you? And not necessarily, it doesn't even have to be an episode, but that really, have stuck with you all these years.
There are two, John. And as Elayne mentioned her earlier, I was married to Brooke Adams in the show. And she was suffering from this terminal illness. And we were married. And she was the love of my life. We got married in the front yard of the house there in Pasadena. And there was a particular scene at the very end of the show, at the end of the two-parter, where Willie was on the beach and he was setting off fireworks in honor of Lizzie, was her character's name. And we shot at a place called Paradise Cove up near Malibu. And we had the entire beach to ourselves that night, the entire cove to ourselves that night. And it just, it was magical. A film crew is a studio unto itself. It's a community unto itself. You have power and electricity and food and a great crew that loves you. And it's populated by wonderful things, and it's self-actualizing. It is a community, as I said. So we had this community of this film crew all night on this wonderful beach, and we set off all the fireworks. And Willie had to weep as he set them off, and it was just a magical night, John. And we shot until dawn, and I'll never forget that evening and night at the beach, setting off fireworks for Lizzie, and it was just grand. It was just great.
Wow!
Remember that episode very clearly. Yes.
Did you I asked this, when I ask these questions, I'm sure my audience is like, what is he talking about? But as an actor, I always think of this stuff. Did you go anywhere, did you, as an actor, did you find yourself going anywhere kind of special to take on that moment? Because obviously that's kind of an emotional experience.
There are techniques, John, that an actor has, at least from the way I was taught at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, where you can use sense memories and affective memories, and use these things to propel you to be in character in a particular circumstance. I didn't have to use any of those things that night. As I said, again, it was just magical. I used Brooke, I used Lizzie as my motivation, because we had become very close, Brooke and I, and it was her loss that I was grieving. And in this wonderful moment, this evening of remorse and of mourning her, it became overwhelming to me. So I had no problem at all weeping at the loss of this wonderful character and this wonderful actress who I had grown very close to. I didn't have to use sense memories or affective memories. My memories were of her. My sense was of her. My sense memories of the way she smelled, of the way she held my hand, of all things, that were sentient. And that was my experience that night. It was just the most extraordinary evening, and I've never had another evening like that.
What a wonderful moment as an actor. Wow.
Yeah.
It sure was. It sure was, yeah.
What was the other one you were going to mention? You said, I've got two.
Well, the other one I think I've told you before, was with Henry Fonda.
Oh, right, yeah.
And Henry Fonda, we had a moment, we were shooting in Santa Monica, overlooking the ocean there in a little strip of park that overlooks the ocean. And in between scenes, we saw a family, and it was a windy day, and this family was trying to light a barbecue so that they could cook their lunch and Henry noticed these people trying to get the fire going. And he said to me, "Hey, Gary, come with me." And so I followed him. We walked over to this family, and he said, "Hey, you want me? Let me give it a try." And so Henry lit their barbecue for them, gave them back their matches, and turned around, and we walked away. And he looked at me and he said, "Now that's the way you start a barbecue." And it was just extraordinary that this family had no idea who Henry Fonda was.
Oh, wow.
This tall, elegant man came over and lit their barbecue for them.
And they
he's
never knew.
one of the great icons of the world. He was one of the most famous people in the world, and certainly one of the most famous actors living in the world at that time. So I found it extraordinary. That's a moment I'll never forget.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'd forget that one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Well, I'll tell you what, I guess I'll make this my last question. I mean, I don't want to have to, I don't know if anybody has to go, so I don't want to, put you out there, but, and it doesn't have to be my last question, by the way, but, somebody had written into me and they were like, look, I want to know what these people have been doing over the last, 3 years of their life. And I don't think they're necessarily looking for anything, extraordinary or not. They're just curious about you because they like your characters and they like you as actors so much. So I guess I just want to go around and just find out like what you've been involved in, like over, let's say, like the last 3 years, whether that be being at home with family, whatever. I think they just kind of want to know. So Gary, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Just in the last 3 years, or in the last
5? I don't care. It could be 10.
said 30,
Or 30.
Okay.
30. What have you been doing for 30 years?
You only have a minute, Gary. The last three is fine.
I'm sorry. Say
We
again.
only have a minute, so the last three.
Okay.
You have more than
In the
that. Come on.
The last 3 years, I have been toiling over my memoir, and I've finished it, and I'm in the editing phase now, and hopefully it'll be out this summer. That's what I have been working on for the last 3 years. Really.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
That's it for me.
Well, I'll be buying that book, by the way, so we'll just go
Yeah.
there. Anyway.
Me too.
Okay, well, why don't we go? Carol.
I've been watching him write his book. God. No, I've not been doing too much of anything in particular. I've been gardening a lot. I love to garden. So that's what I've been doing. And,
Well,
3 years working, and I miss it. But, I've been gardening and being with family.
yeah.
And, helping, reading Gary's pages and, giving him my input. And it's enjoying life.
Yeah.
Healthy and wise.
I love it. Great. Elayne?
Yeah, mostly in the last chunk of time, other than serious interior stuff during pandemic heaviness.
Yeah.
I've been kind of being a playwright and published a lot in different anthologies, and I'm kind of proud of that because it was never my first language. Acting was it, and I never thought of myself that way. But that's kind of been the second half. So I'm writing and directing plays mostly, and refurbishing a home that I bought when I was in my 20s that I've gone back to. So kind of creatively ripping down walls and things like that. So those have been kind of focuses in the last chunk of time.
What, comedic or dramatic?
All both. And kind of like in these anthologies, like best monologues from new plays, best short plays, best what, you know what I mean? That come out in libraries and things like that. And so I've just been working on different levels of different things. And I did see you, John, at Theater West in your wonderful play.
Oh.
And I said hi, but I think I was in my mask. And I thought, well, maybe John didn't exactly. I said, hi, John, I was your wife. And I thought, okay. But yeah, so John was one. I saw John not too long ago at his wonderful performance. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, nice segue to John. Yeah. John?
Oh, the last 3 years. Well, I'm just a journeyman actor. That's all I've ever been, and a composer too. So I just, I just forge ahead. Whoever hires me gets me. And I did a nice run on Broadway in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I got to play Grandpa Joe in that.
Wow.
And I did a off-Broadway Mornings at 7, a great old play by Paul Osborne, with a wonderful cast. Tony Roberts, who just passed in that cast. And then I've done this Eisenhower show, a beautiful play written by Richard Hellison, a great playwright from Sacramento. And as odd as it might seem to imagine going to a theater and listening to Eisenhower talk for 2 hours, this guy wrote a play, and it's gotten better since you saw it, Elayne. Even since you saw it, Gary and Carroll, we keep working it, and audiences really get inspired and uplifted by it. And in these times where don't get me started.
No, I know.
Happening to our country, it is helpful, to use a very weak word, to listen to somebody who was arguably the most powerful man in the 20th century. You can argue it, but he certainly was one of them. Talk. And the play includes not just verbatim, but many, many things from speeches and from books and from stuff that he said and believed. To hear a president who was president for 8 years in this country have had those kind of feelings about his job, what it was, what it entailed, the people he was responsible for. That's been very, very moving to me. I have 5 children, and they range from age 53 to 19. And I want them all to have a future that makes sense and that is good and that gives them opportunities. And as I age out of this picture, I worry that may not be the case.
Yeah.
And so for the last years, I've been writing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters to voters across the country, trying to get them to vote. Had they done so in slightly larger numbers, we wouldn't be quite in the same mess that we're in right now. Anyway, vote, people.
Nice ending. I hear you. Louise.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back a little further. I'll give you a short synopsis. So the last professional thing I did was when I was 21, and it was a fabulous experience. It was the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers video, and the director, my first shot, he turned to me and he said, look, nobody here is an actor. I was the first actress to be hired under a SAG contract for a rock music video. They had been models before that. So anyway, the director said, none of us know what to do. So they had a handheld camera guy. And he said, so just use the set and just go. And so I got to use the entire set. I got applause from the cast and the crew, and the others. And that was my swan song. I was done with acting then. That was
that song again? Because I'm a huge Petty fan and I can picture you in it. What was the song?
Don't Come Around Here No More.
Yeah.
It was an Alice in Wonderland inspired. Right. But then I started seeing the Harvey Weinstein part of the business. And at that time, nobody was being exposed. So you either dealt with it or you moved on. So I moved on. So I went on to have 4 kids with my husband of 28 years now. And watching the kids grow up is just fascinating. certainly fascinating and wonderful. And then now I am happy to live in the moment and really feel it, really be involved with what's being said, what's being heard, what's being celebrated. I look for things to celebrate now, and anything can be a celebration, I have found. So every day I find a way to celebrate with myself, with my kids, with anyone around me. And I'm a happy person, certainly to the core.
Wow, that's great. That's beautiful. Well, let me ask, does everybody have like another 10 minutes or so, or do you need to go, or do you tell me?
I want to hear from Elayne.
Okay.
Oh, I did. I think I did.
She
didn't
did.
I?
She did.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you started us? Did you start us?
No, I think I did.
About writing.
Okay.
Playwright. She's been doing playwright
Playwriting
anthologies.
and
Oh, right.
directing
Sorry.
and
Sorry.
yes, it's okay.
Well, I tell you what I'd like to ask. I had asked Gary, and I loved what Gary said, and I'm just curious on each of your own ends. What is for you when you look back? What is kind of a favorite memory of your time on Family? What kind of sits with you all these years later? So yeah, if we have time for that, I think that'd be wonderful. I'd love to hear from the rest of you. Not to cut you off, Gary, but you had two beautiful ones. But Carroll, how about yourself?
I think working on Family, but it's hard to even say working, but being a part of Family, what it did for me was, in terms of my career, showed me what was possible to do in television and film, and was really kind of set me in motion in terms of what my participation as a producer would be. It's where I sort of took off, or really started my career going, and that it was really about people. That I love producing, I love being in television, I love being in film, doing this because I love the world, and it's like everything that goes on in the whole world goes on inside of a production. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have cooks, you have seamstress, you have janitors, everything that it takes to run the world. And you become a part of that world, and people you would never, ever know in your life, you start to become intimate and have fun with. And people being happy and having fun and being joyful creates good work. And that's the way I always have worked. And I've always been with people. It's, producing is like being a mom. Mm-hmm. You create this world and the parameters around, and you run around in it, as opposed to a lot of people I know that created parameters that are straight and narrow, and there's no place to create. So that's what Family did for me. It started really me being a part of a family of filmmaking, and I met my husband, and 49 years later, and 39-year-old daughter, and just a joyous life. It just built a really solid, happy life for me.
I love that. And hey, by the way, I have to throw in too, because I purposely didn't ask you about it, because Gary goes through it, and you've told me this story, but anybody that's watching this, and that includes everybody that's here too, by the way, you should go watch that interview with Gary that I did when he talks about how how Carroll and he met, and it is an unbelievable story. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. But thanks, Carroll. That was really cool. Elayne, how about yourself? Looking back, when you think about Family, what kind of has held with you?
One of my favorite kind of creative moments that I remember was kind of co-creating or creating the opening, because it wasn't in the script the way it the titles, and kind of it's exciting when you see, the opening credits of something and you realize that you had a part in creating something that wasn't there before.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I mentioned, I don't know, but after the initial scene, when I walked in and found, I keep calling you John, so I don't even remember the character's name, but, John sleeping with one of my friends or something like that. And I left and walked out and got into some sports car or something and drove. And I said to Mark Rydell, who was directing it, what if I just pull over, stop, close the window? Because what would I want to do, And I just started to bang on the steering wheel and scream with the windows closed. And that became, he said, yeah, go for it. So it was like creating something that wasn't there. And you see this silent scream, and then it went, family, and
That
so
was fabulous. I have seen that. I've looked at that a number of times. That was amazing. It was beautiful.
So that
Excellent.
was kind of like, with the director, and Mark was wonderful to allow that kind of, hey, let's do this. Or there was a little scene where before John comes to see me, and I hadn't seen him, John's character, and there was really nothing in the scene that other than like, oh my God, he's downstairs. And we both said, well, what do we do? You know what I mean? There's nothing in this. And I said, what would I be doing? And I went, I might be doing my hair. So the scene started with like my head turned down and go, like, what do you do? And so it was kind of just moments when you are working with people where you have kind of the joy of creating with them. So those were kind of, besides kind of, as I said, the relationships with the people that I was kind of sorry to, not be able to continue with, but I mean, those are precious. As always, people and moments are precious that you hold on to. So
Beautiful.
Thank you, family, for that.
So beautiful. I love that. John, how about yourself?
Oh gosh, I have a bunch of them. And as Elayne was saying, that moment, I remember so well writing the music. That, because the music over the whole sequence right before that was sort of unpleasant.
Yeah.
And it was growing and growing. But when you screamed in that car, that brought it to a great climax that I found a nice way of writing. And then, as you say, boing, family comes on. And that's when the piano came in and started playing that original theme, which was abandoned after that first season. But so that is distinct in my mind.
It's wonderful when things like that happen.
My audition for that thing was as an actor. Was a good moment for me because I had auditioned for Mike Nichols for The Graduate, as had a bunch of fellows.
Wow.
And I read 2 or 3 scenes for him, and he said, thank you very much, and blah, blah, blah. And that was the end of that. And then I was a member of the long line of actors waiting for the noon performance of the first screening of The Graduate at a theater on Wilshire Boulevard where it opened. And we all had been up for the part, and we all went in to see who is this guy who got this role. And we all came out saying, okay, I get it. Fine. Or no argument. And about 5 years or something later, 6 years, 9 years, I don't remember, I wander into Aaron Spelling and Len Goldberg's office at 20th, where Mark Rydell and Mike Nichols also were sitting. And I didn't say anything, of course. I had my 3 scenes ready. And we all sort of sat there, and I was waiting for somebody to say, okay, let's go. And Mike said, you don't really want to audition, do you? And I didn't know what the correct answer to that question.
Wow.
Nobody really wants to audition, and yet at the same time, that's basically what we get paid for. We work for free, and we take money because we have to audition and be rejected all the time. So I paused. I didn't know what to say. I said, well, no. He said, all right, then, the part's yours.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I had never experienced anything like that before. So that was I loved that moment. Because I said, oh, okay. I walked out, and I remember walking to my car, waiting for somebody to say, come back, we were joking. But no. So that was a great moment. And another one was just, I was in a terrible situation with, my wife was busy. We had those two babies that I was complaining about earlier. They were now toddlers. And I had them, and I had to go to the set, to the studio to film and family. And I had nobody to take care of the kids. It was just really, so I brought them to work with me, and they were little. So they weren't like, be quiet and sit there. No, they were younger than that. So not knowing, my scenes were all with Meredith at that point. And I had like 2 or 3 scenes in a row, but Sada was there because she had to do something outside, and then she had something later. So she was in her trailer. So not knowing what to do with my children, I knocked on her trailer door and I said, Sada, would you mind if I gave you my children for the next 3 or 4 hours and you take care of them? No, absolutely. Bring them in. And she sat and babysat my kids for almost a whole middle of a day, and treated them and gave them food. And she walked them around 20th, showed them the different sets and the different things. And they had the most wonderful day. And what a doll she was. And we were friends for years after that, always stayed in touch and saw each other's shows when we were doing stuff. And I mean, I love the whole darn thing, but those moments sort of stand out.
oh, those are great too. Oh my gosh. By the way, I mean, talk about Sada offset. I mean, you just hit it right on the head. Like, we all can walk away knowing what she was like. That's amazing. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Louise, how about you? What would you say favorite memory
Well,
pop in your
first
head?
of all, just the honor to have been on the show. I knew at the time, after the first season, that it was, as a kid, I knew it was a favored show and that it was a quality show. And so I have to thank everybody who was on the show, because I kind of, like, second season is when I came in, so I just kind of rode your coattails. And I am forever grateful to have been on your coattails with such amazing talent. And I will always cherish and enjoy that time that I had on the set. And like I said, the honor to be able to have my name in any way attached to that show.
Wow, that's great. That's terrific. Well, Gary, you wanna anything that you would want to add in on any respect in regards to either memories or just family? I mean, we didn't really talk about it. I know that there was supposed to be a reunion show, and I know that you had written a script and all of that, and we never got around to that. Was that? I guess that maybe we can go there. Did you ever get any resolve to that? Any closure on any of that for yourself?
I had written a script, as you said. I wanted to check in on these characters and see where they had ended up, what they were doing 25, 30 years after the fact, after we last saw them. And so I wrote a script, and I got in touch with Mike, and he was doing other things, and he just didn't have time for it. And he wrote me back and said, I've only got enough energy to do a couple more projects and then I'm done.
Wow.
And so and he wished me luck with it. And so I called Mark Rydell, and he loved it. He was on board, and he was actively trying to sell it. And then I called Leonard Goldberg and sent him the script. He loved it and thought the whole idea was terrific and was willing to be the executive producer on it. And we took it to ABC, where we had been previously on television. And we knew the fellow who was head of the network at the time, a guy named Stuart Bloomberg. Our kids went to the same school. We were all kind of friendly, he and his wife and Carroll and I. And we took it to him, and he said, I just can't right now. There's another show about family that I'm trying to keep on the air, about family and friends that I'm trying to keep on the air, and it just is the most difficult thing. And he was talking about 30-something. And ironically, 30-something and was created by two guys who got their start on family, Ed Zwick and Marshall Herskowitz.
Yeah.
And they had they were responsible for this show, 30-something. And Stuart Bloomberg, speaking for the network, said he just couldn't do it. And we thought, well, put it in development. And he didn't want to do that either. So we were all crestfallen, and I was especially. And that was the end of it. I thought it was a great idea. I still do think that it was a great idea at the time. Where was Willie? Where was Buddy? Where was Nancy? The parents were long gone. Where was Jeff? Where was everyone in their lives? Didn't work out. Didn't work out at all. And I lament that too. Carol and I both had great hopes for that. And it just didn't click, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was worth a try, You got to take that risk. You got to take that jump into the abyss.
Yeah.
That darkness, to see if there's a floor, a bottom to it.
Well, you can look at that as like ending on like a tough note, but I mean, to be honest with you, I actually don't view it that way. I view it as with all of you. The reason that show was as good as it was yes, you had great writing, great producing, all of that, but you have a cast here that is still enamored by that experience that you went through and the depth of it, and all these years later, what it still means to you. It says it all. The fact that you took it to that extra mile to try to continue on, that says so much about what an incredible cast and everything that you had there. It was a special moment, in TV.
And one more thing that just to toss in,
Sure.
that I felt that we were kind of touched by some greats like Mike Nichols and Mark and things like that, and the fact that there was kind of a personal connection, I think, with each of these special talents is so meaningful. I mean, I also remember at my audition with Mike Nichols saying to me, I was sitting in a room with two other actresses and me, and went in and talked to Mark and Mike Nichols, and he said to me, are you nervous? And I said, it's the weirdest thing. I'm not nervous at all. And he said, yeah, and it was like some disease name. And he said, I used to feel that every time before I went on with Elaine May, with Nichols and May. And it's like, you're so nervous, you're numb, and he was so human and interesting, and Mark was so open and creative. And so just, to have crossed our lives, with some of the truly great talents that we have kind of will remain. And, even though they might, Mark recently passed away. And by the way, his biography is amazing to read, the biography of Mike Nichols that was written in the last few years. I mean, you learn so much and see so much about creativity and life and, the trajectory of what that's about. It's fascinating. So I want to just recommend that to people. But yeah, I mean, we had real gifts that we were given, to cross paths. So thank you to the universe,
I tell actors when I teach,
Yes.
always remember that you do an audition, you're nervous, you do the best you can, you don't get the part. You feel, oh gosh, you drive home or you walk home sadly saying, what should I have done? And I blew it or whatever. And then what happened to me was 8-9 years later, because of that audition that I didn't get the part, I get another part. And I went on to do 2 Broadway shows with Mike Nichols as director.
Yeah.
And just being able, as Elayne said, to work with that caliber of people and the directors that were on that show and the actors. And, it was a once in a lifetime situation. It really was. And it was great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, guys, I had so much fun. I mean, I could obviously I could sit here and just talk to you even more, but it really was great, and I appreciate you so much for being on the show. It was really an honor, and I think that the fans are just going to love this. So thanks a lot for all coming together. I really appreciate you organizing your schedule. So.
Thank you.
So
Still
good
fun to
to
see
see
all
all
of
of
you.
Wonderful to see everybody.
Yes, it was. It's wonderful to see everyone catch
See you
up.
soon.
All right.
See you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Hope you enjoyed the interview. Please don't forget to hit the subscription button and also hit the notification bell right after that so that you get notified whenever I have a new episode. And be sure to check out some of my other interviews. Henry Winkler, Jerry Mathers, Angela Cartwright, Shelley Fabre. It goes on and on. They're so great. Enjoy.